All right. Welcome, everybody, to another Commanders Film Room Week 5 edition. Mark, another victory. We're starting to get used to this over here in D.C. Washington won 34-13 over the Cleveland Browns. Let me throw a question at you. If I asked you a month ago, Mark, if the Commanders were going to bench their starters in the fourth quarter, what would have been your initial thoughts from that?
I would have told you that something's gone wrong with Jaden Daniels if they're benching him in the fourth quarter like that. When they did that, like I did jokingly message my friends, being like,
Yeah.
they might bench him at this point. They might put Mariota in there. We might see him some point in the fourth quarter. I didn't think it was going to be at the start of the fourth quarter for the entire fourth quarter. That was quite something. I can't think of a time that's happened for Washington before. Certainly not in the last 20 years. But man, it's been fun, right? It's such a change, and it's taking some getting used to. But it's fun, it's good, and it's just all positive, which is it's such a good change.
Absolutely. It's definitely, we do have to temper expectations. I've been following the team my entire adult life, my entire childhood, actually, too. So just kind of fun watching the team 4-1. I think it's their best record since, I believe, like 2008, I believe, is the best record they've had, 4-1. Scoring 30 points per game. Jane Daniels looks exceptional. It's been a great start to the year. Before we get into our big our breakdown with our film, I just do want to remind you guys, so thank you guys for watching our show. You can follow us on the Big Doug and Carmi show on YouTube. You can definitely follow Mark on Twitter as well, NFL analyst and his Substack. And please like, comment, and subscribe to us, please. So going back to that, a 34-13 victory. For the first time, we saw a little bit of a chink in the armor with Jaden Daniels. He kind of struggled in the first half a tiny bit, but I know this is going to be the topic of our video breakdown today. So Mark, just kind of tease us a little bit, Jaden Daniels kind of struggled early on in his career, not in his career, but in the first half. But then he kind of turned it on as the second half continued. What's a broad brush kind of breakdown of what happened to you, in your opinion?
Yeah, a broad overview would be that the Browns came in with a really good game plan, and we will get into what exactly they did, but they came in with a really good game plan to try to stop Washington doing what Washington had been successful at for the past few weeks. And they set their stall out early that this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to play you guys, and you're going to have to change what's been successful for you in order to win this game. And that worked for a large part of the first half, and that's why we saw those little bits of struggles from Daniels early on. But also the encouraging part is that he found a way to make it work, and even with those struggles, they still managed to put up 34 points and let Daniels bench in the fourth quarter and not really care about the game. And large parts of that was, Deshaun Watson on the other side was terrible. And
Yeah.
I mean, terrible. And so we're not going to look at the defense today because, yes, the defense improved and they did what they needed to do and they played well against, they improved from what they had been. But Watson was just so terrible that a better quarterback might have been able to put more of a challenge. So we're going to focus on the offense and a good defensive game plan from the Browns and how Daniels and the offense managed to adjust to that game plan, the issues that it caused them, and the adjustments that they made that meant that they were still able to put up the 34 points in three quarters and take the fourth quarter off, really.
It's funny. How spoiled are we, right? Like, so basically we had a struggling first half. Skills still were up 17-3 going into halftime. We're producing on offense, and Jane Daniels kind of figured it out. And the one thing before I throw the video to you is what I'm proud about with this team is the team is proving to be multiple, right? We're starting to see that although that they are struggling, they weren't struggling in the last two games, but they kind of hit a bump in the road this time. I feel like the offense is diverse. It could basically be a screen passing game, could be a deep shot game, could be a power running game. There's some multiplicity in the offense which I really enjoy watching. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to you and you can break it all down.
Yeah, so exactly what you were saying is that the offense hasn't been overly reliant on one part of their game so far this season. But the way they've had success for certainly the last 2 weeks against the Cardinals and the Bengals, they run the ball really well. They use Daniels in the run game. They're very multiple with their personnel and their formations, and so that helps them mix up their different run schemes. And they built into play action, and they've taken a lot of pressure off Daniels on the offensive line to do the normal drop back passing. They haven't had to do too much of that. So the Browns came into this game and they said, okay, we are setting out our stall. We are not letting you run the ball on us. We are going to put safety in the box. We're going to load the box and stop you running the ball on us. We're going to commit to a certain scheme to stop Jaden Daniels on the read option game. We're going to be playing aggressive press man coverage to take away the quick game passes that they've been successful with. And they are setting it up so that the Commanders have to do something different and attack further down the field, or they're going to be set up in 3rd and long situations all day. And so we'll see that here, some of how they went about that. This was the second play of the game for Washington's offense. So the first play was a run play that got stuffed. They went nowhere. This is another run play. It's a read option play. We've been breaking these down, but the very basics of it is you have this defensive end left unblocked. He is who Jaden Daniels is reading. And if the guy crashes down inside, Jaden Daniels can pull it and run to the edge. If the guy holds his position or kind of comes upfield, you can hand the ball off to Robinson, and then you've got an extra blocker inside because you don't have to block this guy. So that's the basics of the scheme. Now, the very basic way that teams will go about defending this is what's called the scrape exchange, where they will just have this defensive end crash down on the run inside every time because he gets an advantage because he's not being blocked. So he can just crash down inside on the running back and make a tackle in the backfield. That forces the quarterback to pull the ball on a pull read and keep it himself. And so you'll see this linebacker, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who's almost a safety rather than a linebacker. He's very athletic. He's going to scrape to the edge and replace this defensive end on the edge. And he's going to be the unblocked guy now. And he's going to be in a position to stop Daniels. So it's a basic scheme, but it's one the Browns committed to. And you can see this defensive end is not worried at all about Jaden Daniels pulling this ball. He is crashing down on Brian Robinson, and he is focused on that. And you can see Owusu-Koramoah is immediately scraping to the edge to replace the defensive end because he knows Jaden Daniels is going to have to pull the ball on this read option. And so as we get out here, Andrew Wiley can't get back to him quick enough, and he's in a position to make that play. And you know, Jaden Daniels does manage to eventually get back inside, but the rest of the defense is able to catch up, and he's able to get maybe a yard, but it still sets up a 3rd and long. So that is what they did. They set their stall out of, we're not going to let Jaden Daniels beat us as a read option threat. We're not going to let the run game beat us. And we're not going to let these quick game passes. And this was from the second series where Washington's had a lot of success running quick game stuff where Daniels is able to drop back, hit the kind of top of his drop and get the ball out immediately. So the Browns said, right, we have the corners, we can play aggressive press coverage, we'll match you man to man, we're going to get in your face and we're going to disrupt these underneath routes and stop you being able to hit them. And so what we see here is to the right of the formation, we got a little spot concept. You got the tight end running a corner route, you got the running back releasing out to the flat as kind of a high-low, and then you've got, I think this is Zacchaeus spotting up in between them. And then over here to the left, you've got what's known as a lion concept in the West Coast terminology. It's basically just double slants. Your inside receiver runs a slant. If you can't throw to him, he's going to vacate space for the outside receiver to run a slant. Browns are just going to play pure man coverage, cover one, with a plugger in the middle. And what you'll see is that they are very aggressive up at the line of scrimmage. They're sticking very tight to guys. You see as we've run it on here. The Denzel Ward's getting into Terry McLaurin's face. He's looking to press him. They've got this defender in the hole here that's being very aggressive, reading Jaden Daniels' eyes. As soon as he sees Daniels working to this side, he is immediately working over there. He's not like holding his position, waiting to see if something's going to come his way. He is, I know Jaden Daniels is looking to get this ball out quick, so I am going to trigger on this instantly. And what that results in is Daniels throws this ball, trusting McLaurin to win this slant, and McLaurin doesn't run the best slant. He gets a little bit disrupted, and he's immediately he's there. He could possibly make the catch, but Ward is right there on him. He's able to kind of break it up. And he's also got this threat of this whole player coming in ready to lay a big hit, and he takes a big hit, juggling the pass, and it doesn't come off for them. So this is kind of how the Browns were setting their stall out, is we're going to take away this stuff, with the easy stuff that you've been getting ahead of the chains on and getting into 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, and the stuff that they've been stealing with, basically. And so that sets up 3rd and long situations. And we saw that incompletion, I think, came on 2nd down. set up 3rd and 9. And this was the 3rd and 9. And on 3rd and 9, they said, well, we are going to get in your face some more. We're going to blitz you, and we're going to stop you from having the time to deliver the ball down the field. So that's what we see here. We've got they're kind of showing a little bit of a blitz to this side, but actually this guy's going to fall out, and we're going to have 2 coming off this side. So it's a 6-man pressure. It's the 4 down linemen, plus I think this is a defensive back and a linebacker are both blitzing off of this side. So they've got an overload to the right side. The Commanders, they keep, I think this is Luke McCaffrey, possibly. No, this is Austin Eckler, I think, actually stays in to help chip Myles Garrett on the edge. And then you've got dagger concepts over here, which is just a vertical route that clears safety, and then you have the deep in breaker behind it. And then you've got what's called a swirl route, which is kind of a corner stop, kind of breaks to the corner and then stops his route off from Zach Ertz over here. So we'll run this one through, and you'll see at this point we have the offensive line to the right are all occupied. We've got Brian Robinson's picking up 1 blitzer, but unfortunately we've got this second blitzer that is coming without anyone free to account for him, because the line has slid to the left because of this man right here, Myles Garrett. Which you understand, but it does mean we're overloaded from this side. So that means Jaden Daniels has to account for this guy. And this guy's coming free with 3 routes that are all long developing routes down the field. So as Jaden Daniels gets to the top of his drop, none of his routes are close to being open yet. Ertz is about to break to the corner before stopping, so he can't really throw that. Neither of these have cleared their things yet, and even if they had, that obviously neither of them are open at this point. So he can't work to any of these routes. So at this point, the Browns scheme has worked perfectly. He is dead to rights. Unfortunately for the Browns, he's also Jaden Daniels, and he pulls off this fantastic move, avoids the sack, and then it's an amazing play. And this is the progression that we've talked about in this show before. From week 1, we kind of talked about he would scramble to run, and in weeks sort of 3 and 4, we talked about he's actually progressing and is scrambling more to pass, and that is what we see here. He avoids the pressure and gets outside the pocket, and he could just look to tuck the ball, try to outrun this defender and get down the sideline here, but he doesn't. He keeps his eyes down the field, and he sees Terry McLaurin is running way down here, trying to give him an option down the field, and so he's like, well, I'm good enough to deliver this ball way down the field. And that's what he does. He delivers a fantastic throw. McLaurin makes a catch. You'd love to see him jump out of that and turn that into a touchdown, because this play from Jaden Daniels deserves that. Again, we'll look at this angle. You've got the line sliding to Myles Garrett. Austin Eckler's chipping Garrett. So there's no check down option. His only option is scramble and run himself or find a throw. Brian Robinson does particularly well. He doesn't intend to take 2 here, but because of Daniels' movement, he kind of ends up blocking 2, and Daniels is able to escape out of the pocket, keeps his eyes downfield, delivers a flick of the wrist, and it's a beautiful shot. And it's a shame he gets caught. Sorry, go ahead.
It's gorgeous. There's so much to digest from that one little clip right there, right? So for one, you're starting to see the NFL starting to adjust and kind of counteract what Jaden Daniels does. Jim Schwartz is a very smart defensive coordinator, putting pressure on the short, quick passes and kind of confining him a little bit. And they also have Owusu Koromora that's actually pretty quick and can contain him on run. So step 1, right? Step 2, I love the fact that Eckler, we talked about pass blocking and chipping. He's smacking Myles Garrett, man. He's like twice his size. Eckler's a tiny guy hitting Myles Garrett. He got blown up on the play, but at least he's slowed him enough, right? He slowed him down enough to basically create the packet right there. And then finally, you touched on it. We've talked about the whole evolution of Jaden Daniels. In week 1, we did the film breakdown where Terry McLaurin was open, but Daniels took off on 3rd downs and ran. I love this evolution for him and looking down the field. That was just dimes. Like you couldn't hand the ball better off to Terry McLaurin deep down in the play. It's great.
Yeah, and it's a shame McLaurin couldn't quite break out of that one, because I think the play deserved a touchdown. Really,
I agree.
You mentioned the Eckler thing on Garrett. The game plan of protecting against Garrett was fantastic, and I wrote about that on my Substack this morning. If anyone wants to go read that, I don't do plugs very often, but I thought it was a really good game plan, and we'll see clips of it throughout here, and I'll keep pointing to the different ways in which they helped handle Garrett throughout this post. But so yeah, we'll that was one early response from Jaden Daniels into that. Yes, the Browns did everything right, and he was still able to create a playoff script and create an explosive play. And for a large part of the game, the explosive plays were able to counteract how well the Browns game planned against him. But you could still tell as the game progressed that Daniels was struggling a little bit with what the Browns were trying to do to him. So this is the red zone possession after that touchdown, after that deep ball
play.
And yeah, so they run a mesh concept here. You've got Zaccheaus here running a shallow cross from the left to the right, and Zach Ertz is running a shallow cross from right to left, and they're trying to beat man coverage because, as we talked about, the Browns were setting out their stall that we're going to play man coverage, we're going to get in your face, we're going to make it hard for you to complete the short underneath stuff that you have been so good on. So we'll run this through, and you get this funky motion with Luke McCaffrey in the backfield. This is all kind of to try to misdirect Myles Garrett, really, and slow him down. But what ends up happening is essentially you get your mesh concept, you get your defense flowing one way, and Zach Ertz kind of springs out the back of this, and he is open. And Daniel sees him. He just feels this pressure from a defensive tackle looping around Garrett going inside, and the defensive tackle loops around. He feels a bit of pressure, and he doesn't step into his throw the way he should do. And it's easy for me to say, sat here thousands of miles away in Sweden without a 300-pound defensive tackle chasing down on me.
Yeah.
But it is one when there's a touchdown on the line, you like to see him step into this. I think I've got the end zone angle, so we'll see it a little bit better.
Mark, is that the proper read? Is it supposed to go to Ertz over? Because another the big argument was McCaffrey was open on the sideline. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is the right read for him to go to. I'll go back to McCaffrey in a minute. I just want to demonstrate this. So here, yes, this guy is a few yards away from him, bearing down on him, and he does a really nice job of anticipating this. He can see that these defenders have kind of got mixed up. Ertz is kind of flashing out. He just needs to anticipate this throw and put it the other side of Koromoa in the middle of the field here. And that's what he tries to do. But you can see his front foot, rather than stepping forward and letting him drive into the throw, it kind of falls away and he falls away, and that causes him to drag the throw towards this side of the field rather than in Ertz's path. So you can see how he's kind of fallen away rather than stepping into the throw. And that means that the throw is a yard or two away from Ertz, and it's off target. So it's unfortunate. It's a miss. And it's not necessarily down to, Browns made this amazing game plan and he's terrible. It was more, there was a bit of pressure in his face, but he was kind of a bit thrown off, and we'll see a little bit more of that. But just to go back to the McCaffrey thing, this defender here is responsible for McCaffrey in the flat when he gets there. And I think you can see this defender actually initially triggers on McCaffrey, but because he's playing off, he can see Jayden Daniels quickly looks back over towards the middle of the field. So he's in position to take this away. And I think you'll see it here as we get to the snap of the ball. So you can see his first movement is out towards the sideline because he's seeing that first Jayden Daniels is looking that way, and second that McCaffrey is going that way. So he starts working out that way, but then he sees Jayden Daniels very quickly comes back towards the middle of the field. So he knows if Daniels starts looking that way, he can close that gap and get out there. So that's why I think it's the right read to go inside and not go to McCaffrey. I think it looks like, there's all this space out here and he could throw this to McCaffrey, but actually this guy's watching his eyes the entire time and is ready to break on it. Now,
you could still, close on that pretty quickly.
you could still say, give McCaffrey a chance to break a tackle, and maybe if there wasn't one of these plays coming open, you could do that. But I think the correct read is exactly what you went to, which was Zach Ertz, because there is man coverage, there is guys getting caught in traffic, and Ertz is going to come out the back of this free. So he's right in that. And he's there, like we just saw from the end zone angle. There was the throw, the touchdown was there. He just missed it, and he missed it because he didn't confidently step into his throw like we've seen him do. He falls away from his throw, and you can see him there. He's kind of leaning backwards on his heels, falling back, and it's all arm, and it causes it to drag and pull away from him. So unfortunately, the next play was even worse. So next play, third down, we got that same spot concept that we talked about before. Run with a little bit of a different personnel. This time Zaccheaus is the one that runs the corner out. You got Ertz running the spot route, and it's still Robinson out to the flat. Over here, you've got a rub concept. So if you get man coverage, you're expecting to go to this rub concept where you're hoping McCaffrey can kind of pick these two defenders, get them to run into each other, and McLaurin can break quickly underneath it into this open space. So if you get man coverage, you typically want to work to this side of the field. Now, I don't know how Kingsbury teaches this concept. So he could say, if you're playing man coverage, you'd prefer to run this concept. The way I would know this kind of concept is this is more of a zone beating concept. This is more of a man beating concept. So typically you would try to diagnose if the defense in man or zone. If it's man, we come over here. If it's zone, we come over here. But given what we've kind of already set out, the Browns were trying to play a lot of man coverage. You'd be anticipating coming down here. Now, again, Cliff Kingsbury could teach this differently. So I'm not saying Daniels reads this wrong, but in how I would know this concept, I would not be going up to this side of the field with this ball. I'd be looking down here immediately. So he ends up going to this side, which is a shame because, as you can see, McCaffrey ends up running one corner into the other, and McLaurin comes free here for a potential touchdown. Now, yes, if Daniels faces this way, there's this chance this linebacker can get into this window a little bit, but given the good pick that McCaffrey gives him, you could put that ball on McLaurin rather than out in front, and you could probably get a touchdown. You would expect a touchdown from an NFL quarterback to an NFL receiver at this point.
So, Mark, I kind of want to affirm what you're saying. You know much more about film breakdowns than I do, but from what I understand, I kind of see it the same way as you. Like the top concept's more like a spacing, kind of the zone. You find a spot in the zone, you kind of sit and kind of receive that pass. While on the bottom is more of a pick, and you know if it's man coverage, it's going to be a pick, and someone's going to come off wide open. My question to you is, let's say Jayden made a mistake in this play. Maybe it is in his fifth game of his career. Do you think he read the defense wrong? Like, what could have confused him in your opinion? What did he potentially see?
Yeah, well, so you've got obviously a safety sitting in the middle. You've got a linebacker sitting in the middle. That's not necessarily on its own a zone indicator because, as we saw with the man coverage that they were playing earlier, they had a plugger and they had a deep safety. These guys are all kind of playing off with vision rather than being up in press coverage. So that could potentially be an indicator to him that maybe this is some sort of zone coverage. But it's also was a stacked set once Zaccheaus motioned in, and you've got three receivers all releasing this way. So it takes a little bit to diagnose exactly who's releasing where and pass off which route is going to which receiver. So it's kind of a match coverage, and it could kind of appear like zone. I don't know why Daniels makes the decision to make the throw that he does, because we'll run this on. You'll see Zaccheaus is going to run this corner route. Ertz is going to spot this up around about the bottom of this S. And this linebacker is just there. He's already made this decision to throw it. Like, the ball is coming out at this point. There's already two defenders around Zach Ertz. Like, even if this linebacker is not here, there's every chance that one of these two defenders is able to contest this pass to Ertz. But this linebacker is here, and this linebacker is in a perfect position to undercut this throw. Now, maybe when Daniels made the decision to throw, he was anticipating this guy peeling off and running with Zaccheaus. But when you're in the red zone, you can't assume that this guy is going to do that. You have to see that he's going to do that, especially when you can see that there's a corner out here that presumably is ready to peel off and cover that route, considering there's two guys here and just one receiver. So, I think this is a bad decision. I think if you're working to this side of the field, you're throwing the flat. You definitely shouldn't be throwing this spot route because it's covered by three guys, and you shouldn't be throwing the corner route because this corner and possibly this corner would be able to bail off and pick that off. Really, where you want to be working is Terry McLaurin down here. But if you're working to this side, you chip this out to the flat and you hope that Robinson can break a tackle and get in. Otherwise, you take fourth down. But you can see he's already made this decision. It's a hell of an interception. Yeah,
hell of an interception. Very athletic play.
Yeah, and as we said, that Owusu-Koramoah is a very, very athletic linebacker, or basically a safety, a linebacker in a safety's body, really. That's one hell of an interception from a linebacker. You don't see that from very many linebackers, but it's a bad decision. And so, it wasn't the best drive from Jayden. You could see that he was thrown off a little bit, and that kind of continued for the next few series. So I think this was the next series. It might have been the one after. They were backed up on their own goal line. This was third down. And they run verticals. And what you see is Zach Ertz essentially runs straight down the seam. The Browns rotate their coverage a little bit and they end up busting it. And Ertz ends up running wide open and Daniels just overthrows him.
And that one must play.
Yeah, there's no real reason for him to miss this throw. It's a good read. Because he can see this safety's shallow, and you can see that Ertz is going to run by him at the seam, and there is plenty of space out here for him to throw this ball into. So it's a good read. It's the right ball to throw. He just overthrows it by 5 yards. And someone at the weekend told me that Philadelphia Zach Ertz runs under that.
Yeah,
and I said
2015.
I said maybe even a Philly Zach Ertz probably can't make up the 5 yards of that. That one was quite overthrown, but maybe he manages to get that, but certainly not Zach Ertz now.
Go back a smidge, Mark, if you don't mind. The tiny bit. I always want to see the pocket protection. Is what I'm looking for.
Oh, I've got the end zone angle.
Okay,
so we'll do the end zone angle because I wanted to talk about Brian Robinson on this. I said that the protection plan for Myles Garrett was really good, and this is another example. So we saw Austin Eckler, as you talked about, chipping on Myles Garrett. This time, Brian Robinson has that job, and they give this job to various players throughout this game. It's not just running backs, it's not just tight ends, it's receivers. Everyone has a go at chipping Myles Garrett, and this time it's Brian Robinson. So Robinson chips Garrett, gets a good shoulder on him, prevents him from getting that speed rush up the field, forces him to come back inside, and that gives Lucas a chance to hold his spot. On this side, Cosme does get pushed back a little bit towards him, and that's probably what puts him off a little bit. Again, you can see he's kind of falling backwards. He's not stepping over his front foot. He's not transferring his weight through his throw, and that's what causes him to sail the throw. But you can see he's just a little bit thrown off by what the Browns' kind of aggressive game plan and what they have set their stall out to do. And it took him a few drives to adjust. But he did eventually find answers. And I wanted to highlight this particular sequence of plays. And this is actually on the clips. I've only got 3 of the plays. It's a 4-play sequence. And it came in the 2-minute drill towards the end of the half. So this is the first play of the sequence I want to talk about. I think this was 2nd and 3. Might have been 2nd and 7, something like that. What you've got essentially down here, you got Dyami Brown on a 1-on-1. That doesn't really matter at this point in time, but it is important. He wins this and runs down the field. He's probably more of an alert, or if you like the matchup, you take it. He's probably not the first read in the progression as things would normally be. That would be Zach Ertz on this basic cross. And that's where Jayden Daniels looks to go here. You got an empty formation, everyone's spread out. Again, you've got some chips on Myles Garrett, but we'll get back to that on the end zone angle. And you've got Zach Ertz breaking over the middle. This is a nice aggressive throw. I like this from Jayden Daniels. Despite the safety being there and ready to drive down on it, he has the confidence that he can drive that ball in there and get it to Ertz, coming out of the break early, and get it to him and on him before the safety can make the play. I like that. It's a good read, and it's a correct read. It's a good ball, and you'll see from the end zone angle, it's a really good ball, and Ertz just drops it. Just one more on Myles Garrett, this time Luke McCaffrey, chipping from a slightly different angle rather than inside. He's chipping from outside. So again, it's just adjusting who's chipping him and where that block is coming from. It kind of gives them a bit of a pinch on Garrett, and again, it takes away his ability to speed rush, and it gives Coleman some help. So that's nice. And then Garrett still gets the better of Coleman, but because the chip delayed his rush and it took him a while to get into it, by the time he's getting the better of him, Jayden Daniels is already getting rid of the ball. And you can see again, he's anticipating this throw to Ertz over the middle. He hasn't quite cleared that linebacker, but he's already in his delivery stride throwing the ball. It's a good ball, well placed. Yeah. Safety's not a threat. It's right in the hands. It's just Zach Ertz drops it. So it's not a bad read at all. But the important thing to note here is that Jayden Daniels, I think at this point, looks down the field and sees, if we go back,
I saw that.
Dyami Brown beats his corner and has a step on him. And we can see here, this is the point where Zach Ertz drops the ball and Jayden's watching him. And I think he just looks up and you can see that Dyami Brown down here has a yard on this corner. And he just makes a little mental note of that. Now they're in no huddle. Yeah, they're in no huddle, right? So it's up tempo, no huddle, just before the half, and then 2-minute drill. So he can't be like, okay, let's get back in the huddle. Okay, Dyami, I saw you there. I'm gonna change the play. We're gonna get a shot. It's no huddle. We got to get lined up. We got to get back in the play. And I think because that was 2nd and 3, on 3rd and 3 they ran a quick slant to Terry McLaurin. Then there's still no huddle. Clock's moving. So the 3rd play of the sequence and the 2nd play of what we're looking at, they again go empty, but they call a different play. And this play is almost irrelevant in terms of what Daniels does. It doesn't really matter. You've got a scissors concept up here. You got Dyami Brown on a backside dig. It doesn't really matter. The point is that Daniels, after getting to the top of his drop, doesn't really like what he's reading, starts to feel some pressure, so he takes off scrambling. And he scrambles, sees a runner, free defender, he runs to the sideline, gets out of bounds, protects himself. Great, picked up a positive play out of a negative. But the key here, as you can see, Jayden Daniels talks to Cliff Kingsbury. And this, I saw this happen during the game, and I thought, did he see something? And he's telling Cliff, let's go to this. I've seen something. And Daniels, after the game, in the post-game presser, confirmed that he had seen something and told Cliff to call it. And credit to Cliff Kingsbury for trusting his quarterback and being like, okay, I got you. Let's go. Let's do it. So yeah, I thought I'd really say we got that little play here where, again, we'll just see he's reading the play and he's going to scramble and he's going to get out of bounds and then he's going to talk to Cliff.
So for one, that's fantastic, Mark. I didn't catch that in real time. That's an awesome catch by you. I love it.
Yes. So yeah, just that little talk to Cliff Kingsbury on the sideline saying, hey, we had that thing. And there's 2 stages of this that make this impressive. One, the first play that he saw Dyami Brown actually had that one-on-one down the sideline. He saw that, he knew that he'd won the route, and he kept it in his memory. The second impressive part is there were no huddle. They've run 2 plays since that play. He's just had to scramble away from pressure and got out of bounds to the sideline. And throughout all of that, he has the presence of mind and the confidence to go to his offensive coordinator and say, hey, I saw this play a few minutes ago. Call that shot. We're taking the shot. We've got it. I know we've got it. And it's just phenomenal. And you love that, A, he's got the presence of mind and the confidence to do that. But B, you love that Cliff Kingsbury's willing to go, okay, yeah, cool. Because there'd be a lot of offensive coordinators out there that would go, no, this is my offense. You're a rookie. You do what I call. Cliff gives him the trust. He calls that shot, and you see same look, Dyami Brown one-on-one outside with this corner, and I'll just let it play. Dyami Brown runs by him. Jayden Daniels sees it and delivers an absolute dime. And they get a 41-yard touchdown out of it. And a couple notes before we get into the throw. Once again, Luke McCaffrey chipping Myles Garrett, helping in the protection. Jayden Daniels does a really nice job knowing that I've got a single high safety. He's the only real threat. I'm trusting Dyami Brown to win one-on-one outside. All I know, this is the only guy that can prevent me from throwing this a touchdown, assuming Dyami Brown wins his matchup again. So he keeps his eyes in the middle of the field. He holds that safety in the middle of the field for as long as he needs to. And then he quickly adjusts, sees that Brown has won, and delivers a dime. So again, you see as he drops back, helmet stripe right down those hash marks, keeping that safety in the middle of the field, gets to the top of his drop, sees that Dyami Brown's won, and it's quick trigger throw. Safety has no chance. Dyami Brown dropped in the bucket. Beautiful. So that,
one thing,
you go ahead.
Sorry, no. I'll just say we got to give credit to the offensive line, right? I feel like the offensive line is definitely protecting Jayden Daniels. I love the offensive scheme and the actual wherewithal to have that chipping of the defensive ends every single time. It seems like they're throwing everything at Myles Garrett, whether it's a running back, a tight end, a wide receiver. So that's definitely one thing there. And finally, man, Luke McCaffrey, he's putting his shoulder on everybody. I'm very impressed by that. Good blocker.
Yeah. It's been interesting to see the different ways they've gone about it, especially for Myles Garrett this week, because you don't get a better pass rusher in the NFL than Myles Garrett. And so they definitely crafted a game plan for him. And as I say, there was chippers from everywhere. It was running backs aligned as tight ends. It was tight ends. It was receivers motioned in short. They were chipping him. Then there was, the use of tempo where Garrett was exhausted at the end. There was in the third quarter, they had a touchdown drive. It was like a 9-play, 80-yard touchdown drive in 4.5 minutes. And Garrett played the first 7 snaps of that. On the 7th snap, it was 3rd and 7. And you could just see Garrett was exhausted by the end by that snap. And they ended up being able to leave him one-on-one with Andrew Wiley. And if I had said to you going into the season, on 3rd and 7, we're going to leave Myles Garrett one-on-one with Andrew Wiley, how do you feel about that? You would have said, that's insane, you're fired. But that's what they did. And because the tempo, and he was exhausted, and Garrett still put on a decent rush, to be fair to him, but it wasn't good enough, and they were able to convert. So yeah, that was the drive that I think really kick-started Daniels' confidence again. We saw the confidence to be able to diagnose that Brown had won and to get back to the matchup and ask the offensive coordinator for that, all while scrambling to the sideline. That's just phenomenal. We could just do an hour on that sequence of plays alone. But we saw that kind of kicked him into gear. And so in the second half, they got into some more play action stuff, and we saw him be a little bit more confident. And this was kind of the result of it. And this is a play action scheme that's very common. It's really a drift concept where they get into 13 personnel. It's run heavy, trying to sell the play action. And Zach Ertz is going to run this, what's called a drift route, where essentially he's getting to his 6th step, I think, is the way they coach it. It's about 10 yards down the field. And essentially he's meant to drift over to the middle of the field and find space. That's the coaching point, is you drift to the middle and you find space. So that's where they're trying to go with the ball. The Browns are very familiar with this because they do it a lot. So they take it away. So the check down option on the backside is Terry McLaurin on this deep comeback. So we'll see. They run the play on. You can see this safety is very, very early triggering on Ertz on this route. It's very quite clear early on that that's dead, and you can see already that Jayden Daniels is immediately worked off of this and is just thinking, I've got Terry McLaurin one-on-one here, I'm going to throw this comeback. And what Terry does really nicely is he gets into the blind spot of this corner. This corner is sinking backwards, worried about the vertical threat of McLaurin. So McLaurin works outside to get in his blind spot. And then that gives him the ability to separate when he cuts off. The corner is not going to be able to see that he's cutting off. So you can see he's kind of like searching for where McLaurin is. I don't know where he is. I don't see him. So I'm having to turn which way is he going? And that's when McLaurin can break off and get open. Jayden Daniels does a nice job anticipating the throw, gets the ball out before McLaurin's even made his break. You can see a good few yards of separation. By the time he catches the ball, 5 yards separation. Great play, as you say. So yeah, and that's him back in rhythm. And again, credit to Austin Eckler. This was a hell of a block. Going to cut that defensive end, give Daniels that time to deliver that throw in the pocket. And you could see there, even there, he had a defender in his face. And we saw in the first half with the defender in his face, he was not quite confident, not quite sure of himself, and he was kind of falling away from throws. That one, he was more confident, willing to step into it and delivered a good ball. And I think that just speaks to, like, you know, in the first half, the Browns came out with that aggressive game plan. It kind of upset them, got them off of what they normally do, and it took a little bit of time to adjust, as you would expect from a rookie quarterback. But by this point in the second half, it wasn't phasing him anymore, and he was more settled. And you can see another play action play here. This one, the elite level of Jayden Daniels, I would potentially like to see him throw this, but I understand why he didn't. So we've got an unusual look. We've got two tight ends in the backfield here, and they're going to both sift across to this side and wall off this side, and we're going to run a play action. Offensive line is all going to work this way like it's a run. We're going to sift wall off this side. We're going to heavy fake play action, and we're running, I believe the Shanahans would call this burner, where you have one receiver running a high cross and the other receiver running a deep post beside it. And essentially your read is the deep safety. If the safety stays high, you fire this one over the middle and you have a nice run after the catch opportunity. If this safety jumps up, you rip the ball down the field behind him on the deep post. Now, again, the Browns run a lot of these concepts themselves, so they understand how to defend those concepts. And so this safety does stay shallow. He does attach to this deep over route because they know that's what they want to hit, which does vacate the middle of the field for this deep post route. And there is a moment where you think you could potentially hit it. Now, I understand why he doesn't, because the Browns have this backside corner here that does a nice job of not attaching to McLaurin and just passing him off, trusting the safety to pick him off, and know that he needs to get back deep to replace the safety if this is a deep post route. Now, as it turns out, this corner does stay kind of wide, and there is kind of a window to make that throw. Could Jaden Daniels have known that? Maybe. If you're talking Jaden Daniels in 4 or 5 years' time, I would maybe want him to be throwing that into that window. But that would be an elite level throw. I can fully understand why he doesn't at this point in his career, 5 games into it. Pocket starting to collapse. So this is where Jaden Daniels becomes the runner. There's no throwing options. His check down was essentially blocking. These 2 routes are covered if you're saying this corner is in position to cover this backside post. So he needs to become a runner. He's got no other options. And that's where the explosiveness takes over. I think I've got the end zone angle of this. So we'll get a better look at the running from there. I do. So yeah, drops back to pass. And he's looking at that deep safety. You can see that he's attaching. He does feel this little bit of pressure off the left-hand side. And he starts to feel that pocket collapsing around him. So again, I understand why he doesn't make that deep post. It would have been a tight throw anyway. He steps up in the pocket. And at this point, it's, I've got no check down. I've got no throw. It's scramble mode. And this is where you want him to be able to use his legs, because his legs are a weapon. You don't want him scrambling when there's throws available, but you do want him to be able to scramble when there's nothing available. And this is one of the big ways you can create against a defense that's playing so aggressive with their man coverage, like the Browns were in this game. If they're playing man coverage, their defenders, there's going to be a lot of space for a quarterback to running into, because there's nobody watching him.
Exactly
and they're
right.
all
Exactly
dropping back and covering guys. So, and that's what you see here. The only guy is one linebacker in the middle of the field that was playing a whole coverage, and he's never going to catch Jaden Daniels and stop him from making this a first down. So, it's a good play, and it again shows the confidence that he's made the adjustment. Go ahead.
Exactly. And there's one thing I wanted to say. I think that I put a tweet out there, and I obviously believe it. I feel like what Jaden Daniels does best is he prolongs drives, right? I think he's a passer first. He wants to throw the ball. He wants to create off the pass. But he has done a great job. If it's 3rd and 3, 4th and 3, whatever it is, he's a cheat code on the edge, and he can create on the run. And he's done a great job of protecting his body throughout the entire year. He hasn't really been hit too hard. The one time he actually got hit pretty hard was in the pocket this game, surprisingly enough. So I do think he prolongs the drives there. Quick question for you. It's a little bit off the cuff. I was kind of watching the scheme right here. Does Washington need another wide receiver? People keep talking about potentially pursuing Devontae Adams and, Amari Cooper, yada, yada, yada. It seems like the offense is potentially Jaden Daniels, and I feel like he can distribute the ball. He's more of a distributor, more of a creator. I don't necessarily see if it would be a great luxury to have, but do you think it's necessary in your opinion?
I think there are bigger needs on the team.
Okay. Good answer.
I know a lot of people are starting talking about making an aggressive move at the trade deadline, and I was completely against that idea going into the season, and I don't think that would have been their plan. But I don't think anyone would have foreseen them being 4-1 at this point. And if they beat the Ravens on Sunday, going to 5-1, then you could start thinking about, okay, we think our guy is legit, and we think that our window with a rookie quarterback contract is going to hit earlier than we expected it to. So we can start being aggressive in how we're going to build around him. So I think if he wins this game on Sunday, and you start thinking, okay, the Ravens are a legit Super Bowl contender, and we just knock them off after this run that we've just been on, we might be further ahead than we think we are. That doesn't mean they're going to go all in. So I don't think a move for a Devontae Adams makes a hell of a lot of sense, because he's an older guy on a pretty big contract already. And you probably only get a few years out of him. So I don't think that kind of a move is one that you would make. But if there's a younger guy, I'm not sure T. Higgins is the exact profile that they'd want at receiver, but that type of being a younger guy, looking for their contracts a little bit bigger, offers them a different profile of receiver from what they currently have, but is younger and is someone that could grow with Jaden Daniels throughout the next 4 or 5 years rather than just the next 1 or 2. That would be someone that maybe they think, okay, it's an expensive move, but it's a long-term. It's still got a long-term play as well as being an aggressive move right now. So that would be the kind of move that I think potentially they would look at, would be as I say, I don't know if T. Higgins is the guy that they would want, but that profile of younger receiver with room to grow still. But I don't necessarily think receiver is their biggest need. And I think if they were going to make an aggressive move, I think they would probably prefer to do it at corner because, as you say, the offense is functioning very, very well right now. The offense is... Yes, a receiver would be really nice, especially if you're going to see these loaded boxes like the Browns did in this game where they're constantly playing single high. Getting another deep threat on the outside opposite Terry McLaurin would force defenses to put them in a bind of, do we play too deep to cover the deep shots, or do we play and then risk getting run all over all game, or do we put a man in the box, stop the run, but risk getting thrown all over all game? So that there is a good thought process behind that, but the offense is still very good right now. And on defense, I think the lack of corners that can play in the style that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt want them to, I think that is really preventing the defense from being the style that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt have envisioned and what they did so successfully in Dallas. They don't have the corners that they can trust in man coverage, so they're having to play a lot more two deep safeties, and that's leaving them light in the box, which is making it hard for them to stop the run. So there's such a knock-on effect of not having the corners that they want, that I think if they were to make one aggressive move at the trade deadline, I would guess they would prefer to go aggressive for a corner than a receiver.
Makes sense. I agree.
So, yeah, this was just more of showing that sort of Jayden Daniels had, by the second half, kind of got back into his rhythm and understanding, he can make plays himself, and that when defenses are playing this aggressive, his legs are a weapon, and he can run. I think this was the fourth down play, 4th and 3. You have Zaccheaus. I talked about everyone having a go, chipping Myles Garrett. You've got Zaccheaus here, comes in motion and has a chip on Myles Garrett. Now you would think, that's crazy. Why am I having a 5'8", 180-pound receiver trying to chip Myles Garrett? But Zaccheaus does a nice job throwing his body at him. And again, it's more about the principle of having a second body that is kind of pinching from a different angle, giving Garrett an extra thing to worry about. So he's going to chip, he's going to motion in and chip. You got a vertical route from McLaurin, which he actually wins, but we'll come back to that. And then you got a drive concept here, which is just a shallow cross from Luke McCaffrey, I think this might be. And then you got Zach Ertz running a basic cross deeper. And essentially against man coverage, they're both going to run. Against zone coverage, they're both going to sit. And you're looking at a high-low concept where if you get a zone defender, you basically read off of him. If he sits back, you can take the shallow. If he steps up, you can throw the basic cross in behind him. So, and then you've got another chip out to the flat down here. But all that is to say, the Browns end up getting a free rusher off this edge. I think this is possibly Bates chipping here before releasing into the flat. It might be Eckler, actually. I can't remember. Chipping here, and he's releasing into the flat, and there's no offensive lineman ready to slide across and pick this guy up. So this guy comes free. And on 4th and 3, that is not a good situation to have a free rusher. But Jayden Daniels is the weapon, and his legs are a weapon. And you can see here we're getting a lot of man coverage again, and there's going to be a lot of space for him again. And so Jayden Daniels is able to make the guy miss, take off running, and suddenly there is all this space down the sideline for him to run. And people might say, oh, this is a gimmicky offense, or he's relying on his running ability. No, this running ability is a legit threat. It's a legit option that defenses...
It's a tool.
It's a tool. If defenses want to play this aggressive style to take away the efficient way that Washington have been playing the past few weeks, which people would say is a legit style of offense, then this is a tool that takes them away from that. Like, you want to play this aggressive style, Jayden Daniels can take off running, and suddenly he's picking up 40, 50 yards on the ground, and you're having to adjust again. So he outruns a defender. This is Austin Eckler doing a nice job blocking down the field, taking this guy down the field. This is a touchdown if this defender down here does not get across and stop that. So it just again speaks to Jayden Daniels' ability. 4th and 3, key situation, maybe not quite key, because at this point I think the Browns only had like 3 or 7 points, something like that, and Washington had a good lead. But still, 4th and 3
Yeah.
situation, you want to convert, you want to score. And Jaden Daniels makes a guy miss and takes off, makes them pay for that, and nearly gets a touchdown out of it. Great play.
Yeah.
And then the final one from Jaden Daniels' day was possibly his best throw. You'd probably argue the De'Ami Brown one was just as good, but this was another beautiful throw. He audibled to this one. This is the one where everyone on the broadcast heard him go hippo, hippo, or I think that's what he said anyway, something like that. Essentially, they end up just running, I think, 4 verticals here. But the idea is they saw this one-on-one outside. At this point, I think Denzel Ward had got injured and was out of the game. So this is a backup corner on Terry McLaurin. And they see we're playing man coverage with this backup corner. And if I go back, I said I'd talk about it here. Terry McLaurin one-on-one with that corner ends up burning him. But Jaden Daniels was unfortunately pressured and didn't have time to wait for that. But McLaurin got held and had beaten his guy. So I'm guessing when they got to this next play that Terry McLaurin had let Jaden Daniels know that, hey, I burned my guy. Come back to me on that one. And he did. So, yeah, we'll see this here. He snaps the ball. We get that one-on-one. Jaden is working out there. He quickly checks the safety, makes sure there's no surprise rotation or whatever like that, but he knows it's man coverage. He knows if he puts this ball where he wants to put it, there's no way that safety's getting anywhere near it anyway. McLaurin wins the route. It's a really, really good ball. You could not place that better. And it's a shame that McLaurin can't come in with this one. He's always had a bit of a weird catching technique. He's never been a hands catcher. You'd love him to just put his hands up like that and catch the ball away from his body. He's always been a trap catcher where he wants to catch the ball and pull it into his body. And as he catches the ball with his hands and tries to pull it into his body, because it's so high on him, he pulls it into his face mask, and his face mask makes the ball bobble out and he drops it.
Yeah.
It's just a shame. Drops have never really been a huge issue for Terry McLaurin, which was one of the reasons why he fell to a 3rd round, was because of this catching technique. And it's never proved to be too much of an issue for him, but right there it was. So, but yeah, that was the end of the clips that I had on Terry McLaurin. I know we have still got 5 minutes left in the hour, so if we wanted to walk through 1 or 2 other plays, I have a couple others, but that was what I thought was really nice from Jaden Daniels, is that we saw the Browns set out this stall of, we're going to take away the things you've been really successful at throughout the last few games, and we're going to make you beat us in a different way. And Jaden Daniels, essentially, he had some bumps in the road, but he found different ways to beat him, and those legs were a very big part of being able to beat that aggressive style. And it was great to see. The other big point that I don't think I can make too big of a deal of is that sequence in that 2-minute drill. The awareness to know De'Ami Brown won his matchup, to keep that in his mind. That would be one where, in a normal game situation, you would keep it in your mind, and De'Ami Brown would keep it in his mind, and they'd go to the sideline at the end of a series and they talk it over and they say, hey, I had this corner and we get that look, we can go back to it. And then Cliff Kingsbury might come over and Brown and Daniels would go to him and say, hey, we had this look, let's get back to that. And he probably would have seen it on the film after the drive as well and been like, yeah, we'll get back to that. For Jaden Daniels in that moment to remember it, and as he scrambles off to the sideline, think, I've got the time now to tell Cliff I want to get back to that, and I will, and he does, and then Cliff trusts him. It's phenomenal. It's great play. It's such good awareness, such good football intelligence, and I just can't speak highly enough of it.
Absolutely. So yeah, obviously the NFL is kind of a copycat league, right? So one thing that's kind of running through my mind is this the blueprint to beat Jaden Daniels? Is to play press man coverage, to potentially have a QB spy on him to kind of shut him down in that regard? Do you think that is? Do you think that's the way to stop Jaden Daniels, or do you think he's shown enough and Washington's offense is multiple enough to kind of counteract that? Like, because obviously we scored 31 points for I think 3 straight games now. Is it possible to maintain this?
I think that will be a blueprint to an extent. Okay. I think teams will try to play a safety in the box, try to stop the run, because the run was just too efficient the way it had been going the past few weeks. And especially the read option stuff was way too efficient, way too easy for this offense. I think we've talked in this show a few times in the past few weeks. I've called Jaden Daniels a cheat code at times, and that it really does make it hard for defenses. So if they're not putting a safety down in the box to stop that, it's very, very hard to defend the read option run game that Washington is currently running. So I think that will be a blueprint. And I think this method that I talked about right at the start, where they're scrape exchanging aggressively, you see some teams will employ this tactic, but they will have this linebacker won't commit to it. Like, he'll be like standing here thinking, okay, I'll get out there, but I'll just also hold my position, be ready for this to be handed off inside. But you can see Koromoa, like, this ball isn't even the gut of Brian Robinson, and he's already scraping to the edge. And he's able to get out there instantly. And Wiley has no chance of getting to him. And that takes that away. Now, again, Jaden Daniels makes this one guy miss. He can make any one defender miss, but the presence of him delays Jaden Daniels from just taking off running and picking up 10 yards. And that allows the safety to come down. That allows a linebacker to overlap, and it allows the corner to come in. And eventually the defense swarms and he gets very little from the play. So I think defenses will be trying to take a lot of what the Browns did, especially against the run, especially with this scrape exchange stuff, to try to force Daniels to beat them as a passer. The issue that they will have is that not every team has 3 or 4 cornerbacks that can play man coverage, press man coverage in the aggressive style, which the Browns did, and hold up.
Or Koromoa safety, or
exactly.
or a Koromoa type of athlete in the box. Yeah, exactly. So, because Koromoa is actually, he's a safety linebacker hybrid who is maybe not as athletic as Jaden Daniels, but athletic enough to slow him down, which not every team has that, in my opinion.
Exactly. Not every team has that. Not every team has a safety that can cover a tight end in press coverage. Not everyone has a linebacker that can cover an Austin Eckler out the backfield. So there would be a matchup if you want to play man coverage, and we saw in this game, like, Denzel Ward got injured, and suddenly Terry McLaurin was winning his matchup, and even before that, Dyami Brown won his matchup a couple times, and that was one of the big sparks of the game. So there will be winnable matchups for them to attack, and Jaden Daniels is more than capable of making those big throws down the field. As we saw, he's made a couple of gorgeous throws in this game.
Absolutely.
So it will be tough for defenses to do exactly what the Browns did, because they won't have the guys to hold up in coverage. So they will come up with some different coverages. I think you'll see teams try to disguise stuff and mix man zone and mix up which zones they use and disguise stuff and rotate safeties and try to confuse them that way. But the blueprint for loading the box and trying to stop the run, I think, is something that most teams will try to do.
I agree with that.
The ways that they get out of that is by beating them, either by, as they did in this game with the deep shots to McLaurin and specifically Dyami Brown, those kind of schemed up shots where you don't have the corners outside to live in this world, so you have to put 2 safeties back. Like we were saying earlier with Washington's defense, they'd love to live in this man coverage world, but they don't have the corners for it. So you have to put the safeties back. So there might be a defense they come across in the next few weeks that is able to play this exact style. But even then, it'll be tough. So I think there is a bit of a blueprint specifically up front. But if Daniels continues delivering great deep throws and guys like Terry McLaurin, and if Noah Brown comes back, and if Dyami Brown continues, and Luke McCaffrey keeps stepping up, and those guys all start making some plays down the field, then very quickly those defenses will be like, okay, we can't give up the explosives. We've got to let them run the ball as they want to do it, and we'll keep a safety back to stop the explosives. And then that just goes back to what we saw them do against the Bengals and against the Cardinals, which was run all over them. And so it makes it very, very hard to defend this offense. It's very promising for Washington. And it's hard to make a blueprint, but I think this is the closest thing we've seen to one so far.
I agree. And plus, Cleveland has a pretty good defense. They had one of the best defenses in the league last year. Let me throw one more question at you. We'll kind of close the show on this. So it's more of an opinion question. One of the common criticisms all offseason was Cliff Kingsbury can't necessarily evolve his offense, and potentially, he starts off hot, but then kind of hit plateaus and kind of hits a rut, and maybe will spin off as the year goes on. I guess my question to you is how confident are you in Cliff Kingsbury moving forward? And have you seen a lot of variety in all your film study over the past couple of weeks?
There's definitely been a ton of variety. There's been a lot of different ways to get to some of their core concepts, but there's been a lot of plays off of those concepts. And we even saw some variety this week. Some of the runs that hit were new-ish run schemes, like varieties of run schemes that they had run previously, where we show one thing on film one week, and then the next week we know that team's preparing all week to defend that thing, so we'll run a variation of it and we'll hit it. So like we've seen earlier in the season, we saw them run a few trap schemes where they pulled both guards and trapped on the left. And this week we saw them run a crunch scheme, which is the next level of that, where both those guards still pulled, but they also had a tight end pulling and blocking the 3 technique on the backside. And that one was one that was Brian Robinson's touchdown run, was his first one? Yeah, his first one, where Luke McCaffrey made a nice block on a corner and Robinson made a safety miss in the box. But the run scheme up front was beautifully blocked and beautifully executed, and it was a different one. They hadn't shown that variation so far this season. That was the first time they'd run that. So that shows that they still have stuff that they haven't got to in their playbook, and they still have plays to build off of the stuff that they've already established, which tells you that there's a plan. It tells you that that it's not just a one-dimensional, like, we're just going to beat you one way and we're going to run our handful of plays the way that Cliff Kingsbury was kind of labeled in Arizona, which wasn't really fair then. It certainly isn't fair now, and it's been a real surprise. It's been a really good, diverse scheme, and I think Kingsbury deserves a lot of credit for that. The whole coaching staff on offense deserves a lot of credit for that, because I'm sure the likes of Anthony Lynn and Brian Johnson and Bobby Johnson all have a hand in that. So yeah, they all deserve a good credit for that. But I think from what I've seen so far, they still have new wrinkles every week. So they're still building on what they've shown, and that's very. I'm hesitant to compare it to 2012, but that was what you saw with RG3 and Kyle Shanahan in 2012, which was in week 1, they showed a bunch of just normal read options. By week 3, they were running the arc blocking read option stuff, where they knew that the adjustment was the scrape exchange. So we're going to arc block and take that out. And then by week 5, they were running triple options, and they were building on the offense week on week. And that's what we're seeing right now, is they're building on the offense week on week, adding new layers in every week. And, who knows if it will continue, whether by week 10 it will have fizzled out and they won't have any more layers to add, or by week 17 they're still adding new layers and it's still looking great. I can't predict the future on that, but all I can say is so far they have been adding more layers as each week's gone on, which is encouraging.
Yeah, very encouraging. So that's great to hear. So Mark, thank you for everything. A great breakdown. You guys can follow Mark at Mark Bullock at NFL at Twitter. He has some great content there. You follow him on Substack as well for the written content that he just produced right here. Guys, thank you for watching our show. All 850 of you guys watching us live. You can also catch the replay on YouTube and also on X. I appreciate it. We have our big game of the week, Baltimore Ravens versus the Commanders at 1 p.m. Should be Flux in prime time. I have no idea what the NFL is doing, but we'll check it out. It'll be fun. And we'll see you guys next week. Take care, guys. Peace.